I'm just waiting for it to start up. Hello, this is the June 4th, 2024 meeting of the Node Loaders team. Just started the stream, adding it to the notes. Well, I guess our agenda technically is the uh sync loader hooks API, but we don't have Joy. We could talk about that if you guys want, but why don't we first talk about the stuff you guys are working on? I haven't had a chance, Paolo, to look at the new PR you put up about the hooks threads, but I know we've talked about it in theory.
Yeah.
Um, so on the like meta thread about like what are we doing about this topic in general, I've been trying to basically get Matteo to clearly state like what's he blocking for on
Mhm.
Gabrielle's PR? Like what in particular does it need to do for him to unblock? Because he said vague things like uh all use cases and things like that. It's like, okay, well, um,
Yeah.
so I'm still waiting on answer about that. But I guess, um, so I think the last time we talked about this, your design was like maintain separate chains within that hooks class, but
Yep.
that they would still run in a single thread. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So I haven't changed I will give you some context to James and Gabriel if you didn't have the time to check my PR since I sent it a few hours ago. So basically, the idea that I had was that try to provide sorry, my English is lacking at this time of the day. So to provide people a certain amount of isolation without giving up on the single thread approach. Because of course we have the single thread that makes sense for on in regards of performance. So we don't want basically to spawn and flood people with thread, which makes sense. But we can't afford the hooks to be completely shared across different threads. Yeah, because for instance, because so far what my feedback on the way was the feature was written today was making some assumption that when I start verifying the bot PRs before after the revert doesn't really matter. I realized that basically what didn't always hold. So basically, if you do not use dash dash import, you have different situation between parent thread and child thread, and basically you can eventually modify the chain later for the parent thread because basically you install hooks from the worker thread, which is probably not what the user wanted with the single thread approach. And that's why basically with Matteo we started designing a solution that basically avoid this thing. So we provide isolation at least on the sequence level. Since we work on the same thread, we can't provide, or at least we can't provide as of today, isolation on the code. That's
Which I've
something.
always thought is not necessarily
It's
even desirable. Like we're more likely
what
that
it is.
hooks are going to want to share things like a cache
They
than,
might or they might, but the thing is that but they might not want by default. Or in other words, if people don't realize that hooks might do actually share the same memory space, they might have side effect that they are not thinking about. That's my point. That was the point, which hasn't changed so far. That's fine. The thing still holds. So hooks still share the memory thread, still share the same instance in theory as some sort of degree, but they don't share the same sequence. So you cannot pollute the chain of a parent thread from the children thread and the other way around. It is simply not possible anymore. But you can share them by default if you want, in a way.
You're saying
how
you can
how
opt into sharing them across multiple use
Yes.
cases.
I mean, I think by like setting a global variable, for example, like you would be pretty explicitly doing something that was like,
Yeah.
uh, well, is it opting in only through stuff like global variables, like stuff in code, or are you also like creating
No, at the moment, the
new
only way
options
to
in like the register call or something like
no, no,
that?
no, no. At the moment, basically, if you use dash dash import, you implicitly share the same. Actually, that's the fun part. If you opt in via dash dash import automatically, basically, if you do not the dash dash import, since process inherits exec argv automatically, and we don't support the other case so far. Basically, what happens is that when a child thread is started, it will inherit the option from the parent thread. So basically, it will reinitialize the same chain that the parent had at the time of the creation. So in that case, in that sense, they share the same chain, but after that moment of creation, they basically diverge. So once again, they are not basically messing each other. So there is an easy way to basically for users to reproduce the current case that, well, basically all the worker threads have the same chain, for instance. But from that, after the creation moment, they completely are independent, so they can play as they want. So basically, I think that this. Do you like it, James? Sounds cool to you? Okay. So basically, that was the best because we evaluated several stuff, and this seems to be the easier. I mean, it was pretty. If you notice, the amount of changes I have to make on top of Grabel changes were very little. Basically, changed from a single chains array to an object of, sorry, a record of an array. That's pretty much it, and a few other cosmetic things.
Mhm.
So it was an easy change from the current status quo of the entire system. And this should solve, at least on the dependency stage, all the problem that we found in the last week, basically. Now, when it comes to code memory isolation, that's another point we can probably revisit in the future. But for now, it should address all our requirements. Because
Just
also provides, sorry, I will finish basically since I basically I'm checking the meeting. One thing that I also provide, which Gabriel started on thread ID and worker data. In my case, I also added the chain ID and the initialization data that was lost in the design. So we provide all the information to the hooks to decide where they are running on, and that's it.
so
So
actually, what? Yep. Sorry. Go ahead, Geoffrey.
you go ahead. I'll go after you.
I just wanted to say that I also didn't have too much time to look into the details of the PR, but from the idea point of view, I like that the chains are isolated and they can grow. It's more or less like the async local store can go into the same direction. Is more or less the same principle in the implementation, which is proven to at least have some kind of correctness. We still have the issue of the one shared thread for multiple threads, which has what I wrote today in a couple of messages, create has the potential to create weird bugs
Yeah.
that are difficult to diagnose. I don't think we have a quick solution to that with a worker threads approach, because if you have two threads that send a message to one common thread, the order matters, because if the first call modifies some global state, the second one might benefit or have a disadvantage because of that. Yeah. So at a theoretical level, it cannot be guaranteed to be entirely pure functional. So pure functional and correct in, so I cannot have a mathematical guarantee that if I call the same function with the same parameter twice, I have the same results.
Yes, yeah, for
because
sure.
because the share, and that's for me one point that gives me a bit of a shiver on the spine, because I think we reverted once the thing, so maybe we reverted the second time afterwards if we find out that there is out there some use case that is broken because of that, which I didn't believe in the first place that it will come, but it came earlier than I thought for the first
Well, that
approach.
could also be something that maybe Joy's on-thread sync hooks can address. Like if you find the need for that, use the synchronous ones, because then it's like guaranteed execution order and so on.
Well,
Like the only reason these are off-thread in the first place is because to try to get them syncified so that they can affect CommonJS. Like that was the whole point.
I know, yeah.
Now, if you're able to write your customization logic completely synchronously, like most transpilers are sync, right? Then you could just use the on-thread ones, unless you're specifically wanting to do something that like
Do you
shares
mean
a
with the
transpilation.
unthread ones? You mean the
Well,
sync?
that don't exist yet. The on-thread ones that Joey's
Ah, I
proposed.
see. I see.
Mm.
Okay.
But
Then so unless you want something like a shared cache that's shared among all
mm.
threads or something like that, then the on-thread ones like will be fine and will solve what you're talking about.
Well,
But
two consideration here. First of all, I mean, actually three consideration, if I may. First of all, I mean, cache by definition can be idempotent, and so we don't care whether it's shared and handled in our readable way. So that's probably fine.
well, that's the user's responsibility to
Yes, yeah, that's
deal with.
that,
And maybe they
which
can
leads.
include the thread ID as part of the cache key or so, like there's so many ways they can
Actually,
handle this
that was
themselves.
exactly my second point. Is the reason why I aim to include the data, worker data, thread ID, and chain ID in all the contexts in initialize, resolve, and load, is because this way, even if they want absolutely to use global variables, rather than storing in a let me put it in a way, rather than storing a string, they can store to a record of strings and they index by the chain ID, so they never collide. That's pretty much it, and we solve the global state. Otherwise, it's their fault. It's not our fault if they write horrible code, to be honest. At some point, we got to stop worrying, right?
So I had a few thoughts on all of this. So one is that like my initial hesitation with the whole multiple chains thing
Mhm.
was like, oh my God, this is even more complexity. Like we're drowning in complexity already. Do we really need this, or can the user get by with something simpler? Um, I think I'm coming around to the point where of like if you call register from a worker thread, most users are going to think it should only affect that thread. So that should kind of be the default behavior. And if it doesn't behave that way, then users will think we are buggy. And so this is, I guess, arguably then, therefore, this is complexity that we need to match user expectations. So I appreciate you implementing in a way that's as simple as can be, like keeping at least to one thread. Like if
Yeah.
it was if the solution was to spawn multiple threads when the user calls register from threads, then it'd be like, oh my God, like are we sure we have to go this far? But what you're describing sounds much more close to the minimal state that like this isn't that much of more of a maintenance burden. And what was the other thing I was gonna say? Uh, the oh, the performance. So passing in primitive strings like thread ID sounds fine. The only thing I was thinking was like, if you're passing in the like worker data
Mhm.
object,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've already done this, but maybe we should implement that as like a getter or something so that it's lazy. Like if the user's code never actually references it, then we don't incur the hit of like creating this object in memory for like every hook that gets run, every function call.
Yes. I mean, yes. Yeah, sorry, let me clarify what I was thinking. Yes, I would just eventually do it in a follow-up PPR. I want to make sure we don't introduce because that. Sorry, let me clarify what I'm thinking about. Of course, so far I've tested only with my few scenarios that I have for the tests, and for instance, in Platformatic, it was broken in few places, and we basically with this feature we unbroke it, we fix it basically, and we can do eventually in the future, especially if users keeps using a lot of worker data, which might not be the case. So eventually we can replace with a getter very easily, but I wouldn't do it for now, just to make sure that if anything is failing right now, we don't have too many stuff to check with eager optimizations. For the future, that's fine. I don't really, that's absolutely fine. But I would keep it simple for now and see if we unbreak people. If it works, then in a very easy follow-up PR, we can immediately introduce this thing.
Okay. Is the worker data that when you pass it in, is it like Are you cloning it, like structured clone or something like that? Or is it a frozen
That's a
object?
good point, because I think that at the moment I'm for sure cloning, because the worker data is immutable, right? Once you spawn it.
The thread, you can't, yeah, we don't provide a way for the user to get rid of the thread.
For instance, if I do require worker data, the worker data is an object, and I write to that object, I'm technically only modifying the local copy of the object, but not the initial worker data. If you understand what I meant, basically. Sorry, I misexplained
Well,
that.
I'm thinking that if the user, if we pass it in on like context or something, and then the user like adds a property to that object, that
Yeah.
shouldn't then remain like the next time that hook is called for some other module. You know what I mean? Like that, like each hook should get its own
Yes.
copy
Then I
of
can
that.
then probably we don't need we don't really need the getter, because basically I can clone the worker data in the initialize and keep it there forever. And because the thing is that, and right now I'm passing the worker data from any call which makes the makes async request, basically responds to the other thread. So basically I'm transferring the worker data back and forth is horrible probably. I can probably
Yeah,
change
however
it.
you want to do it. Like when I was thinking about the getter aspect, I could be like, okay, well then that's where we clone it. Rather than cloning it like every time,
But
we
you
can.
you can't, because it's on a different thread. That's the problem. So we have to clone it
Well,
as
once it's on the hooks thread, like we save it when that hook is registered,
yes,
and then you're cloning it every time that the hook is
but it
run
means
for
that
every module.
you're just passing a reference, right? You don't really care, probably, because it's a reference to
Well,
the
if you pass
object.
a reference, then that makes that it's a mutable thing. Like users could edit what's.
I see. Okay, it's too late for me to goodly read. Let me think about it tomorrow morning. Okay, I will,
Okay.
because actually you made a good point that I'm transferring data
We could
back
put
and
this
forth
as
with
a
that.
to-do. I'm just like throwing it out
Yeah.
there as
Yes.
like
Yes.
something
Yes.
we should
Yes. Yes.
probably clean up.
I agree.
The
I
other
agree.
thing I was going to ask was, what about when the hook or when the thread exits? Does the chain that was created for that thread disappear?
No, that's something I haven't implemented at the moment. I
Like,
specifically said right now that that part was still left to be implemented. I can install on exit hook for sure, but it's slightly more complex than that, because if you notice, one thing that I introduced in the PR was a clear call, module.clear call. That is a very fancy name for something that just basically changed the current ID of the chain. So basically think about this. You have an object. Right now you have an ID which is pointing to a specific key in the chain. At some point I say clear. Clear, what we'll do in the current thread will just generate a new string, and therefore basically the chain will point to nothing. This is equivalent to basically starting a new chain fresh. What I have not done is that when I do clear the queue, I should also send an async request to the hooks thread to say, please clean this queue. And the same when basically the worker thread exits. So that something is still pending. It's not very hard. It's not just that I want this thing to go out as soon as possible, eventually refine later. But I think about this every time you basically start a worker thread. You created the hook, which is pretty small. Basically, just declare it to function that you don't even keep executing. So it should not be a huge memory leak problem. It's something that we need to address, but will not prevent probably the PR to go now for early testing from the user base. But there's something that definitely we need to basically check.
But
so a name
wouldn't
like
that
clear sounds far too generic to just have something off of Node module. So I feel like we at least need
Was just a very temporary name. You can
yeah,
rename it as you
clear
want.
hooks chain or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yes. Yes.
uh, we have the precedent also of that deregister API from like a year or
The
two ago.
the registers is specific to a single hook, though, right?
Yeah, but I mean, why would you want to like if you can deregister a particular, well, it's a set of hooks.
Yeah.
So it's the counterpart to register. Like register adds a set of hooks,
Yeah,
deregister
and then
removes a set of
yes.
hooks. Um, you could have the same result as clear by just calling deregister repeatedly for like all of the hooks you've registered. Um,
Yes, but the thing
unless
that
we
the
we
user
could have
case of this is,
deregister all, I suppose, but
yeah, Oh yes, absolutely. The reason why basically I call it clear because I mean the use case for this is that when basically you unwillingly inherit from the worker thread from the parent thread a queue and you wanna skip it. Think about when you're writing an application, you're using some I don't know some transpilers something from a library, and you don't want this chain to stay in your worker thread, and you wanna clear it. Therefore, you have clear to basically shut it down. That's why I introduced that API. So basically, we give flexibility to from end user that are using certain libraries to basically drop out of anything they don't want to use to
Well, that's
execute.
kind of like how we already have, if you call a new worker and then in the options there's exec RV and then you pass it an empty string or an empty array, then it won't inherit the flags
Uh,
that Node started with.
yes, but you have that in that case, you have to basically the user will have to basically get execrv, filter out import, and eventually you see where he's going, right? It's very convoluted
Mm.
DX for the users. Of course they can. Of course they can. It's just very
I mean, we
complicated
could we could just add a new option to new worker that's like
eventually.
inherit module customization hooks true as the default,
Yes.
and then they just set false, and then
But still, I think the aspect of freeing the memory that the hooks are taking when the thread ends is not so unimportant, because it works fine for use cases like Piscina has, where you have a thread pool. They live like forever. These threads don't
Mhm.
usually die. But if you have another use case where threads are started and stopped, and then on each
Mm.
start stop they contribute to these chains, and these chains stay afterwards in memory. I think that
Okay.
might cause some problems if you have an application that runs 24/7. You will eventually run out of memory. If it grows slowly, it grows forever. And
I see.
yeah,
Okay,
that's
I can add the cleaning. At least I will try to create the most naive cleaning strategy. So basically on exit on the worker thread for sure, and eventually on clear I also clean up the queue. Eventually it's not a
I
big
mean, I
deal.
feel like all of this could be a follow-up PR. Like we don't have any way of unregistering or deregistering hooks today.
Yeah.
So this could just be an improvement that lands on its
Yes.
own. And then we could like discuss it in detail. Like, do we want deregister and deregister all? Do we want, like all these, there's a lot of variations of like, oh, should it automatically clean up when the thread ends? I'm assuming yes, et cetera, et cetera. Like there might be
Uh,
enough here to justify
yeah.
tackling in its own
And
PR.
another thing that I also like to discuss with you also, that's something I
Well, before you get into that, can I just ask you one more
yeah,
question? Is
sure.
it possible to just take the clear out of your current PR and then we'll deal with that as a follow-up, or would that somehow leave this incomplete?
I need it internally, but I can avoid to expose it. I mean, sorry, to clarify. In the internals, it has a more meaningful name, which is reset hook chain ID, which of course is an horrible public name. So I can eventually avoid to expose it to the public if you want.
So why don't we do
And
that? If just yeah, get rid of the public-facing API for it, and
yeah,
then we
yes,
can
that's fine.
discuss this as a follow-up.
Yeah, that's probably fine. Yeah, I mean, it will be this. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just change setting. It's a setter, so it's very stupid method. Yes, I can definitely remove it. One thing that I would like also to mention, the one thing that I basically I will steal from the Joy's uh, proposal that if you want to propose a deregister API specific to a hook, we have to also introduce the concept of hook ID. So basically, every time you register a hook, you get some sort of ID, unique ID eventually, which you can give it back to the register call, and it can be used later to very quickly say, remove this one from the queue.
Yeah, I mean, I think the earlier PR from a year or so ago that was called deregister, um, treats it as like a set of hooks. Like
Mm-hmm.
you call register with a URL of a file that exports,
Yep.
one or more hooks, right? And then you
Yep.
would deregister, I think you pass it back the URL of the same file maybe, and that's the key. I forget how the PR worked, but like somehow deregister would know which set of hooks to remove, and that would be it. You couldn't like it
Okay.
wasn't
So
the fine-grained ability of like, yeah, I registered a resolve and a load, but now I want to deregister just the load. Like that wasn't possible. I don't know if we need that ability because like if someone really wants that, then they can just define like two files. Like instead of it being like hooks.js, it could be like resolve hook.js, load hook.js, and you call register twice, and then you could like deregister just
yeah,
load hook.js, you know?
no, I see that. Of course, they have a control on that. I mean, once again, the only use case I see from unregistered or deregister, whatever you want to name it, is when they inherit from the parent thread by mistake. And basically, I mean, sorry, let me clarify. When they inherit from the parent thread unwillingly and they don't really know why they're inheriting such hook and how to remove them. That's another thing that is also missing is a way to list all the hooks installed for recurrent thread. That's something we don't even have at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we should. Why don't we tackle all of this in a follow-up? Because there's a whole
No,
bunch of
absolutely. No,
things.
yeah, absolutely. I'm talking about the future. Yes,
Because like we
absolutely.
also have to have the worry of like say we have clear or deregister all or whatever we end up calling it, like we have to avoid the footgun of someone running that in a thread thinking they're cleaning up the current thread when they're actually affecting the whole process, you know?
No, that's the other way around. Clear only works on the thread level.
Okay.
Clear is only,
I thought when
basically,
yeah, okay,
so it's fine. Bye, James.
okay.
So Clear basically already just works for the current thread. None of the API I'm thinking about today is meant to work on the full thread because that's a violation of the isolation. If a thread is doing something, is doing that only for the current thread. That's it. On the hooks
So
thread, but only in regards of the current thread.
on the hooks thread, it can register hooks, but only to apply to the current thread. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so there's no like addition to the register options to be like register these on the main thread chain versus the current thread chain or anything. Okay.
No.
I think that's fine. Like let's avoid the complexity unless we discover we need it.
Yes. What we might do at some point, if you want to basically to have the chains to interact, is basically saying we also provide you an API which you can use as a loader, basically as a resolver load that will explicitly invoke another chain. But we have to make sure this is explicit so people know what they're doing, but not automatically in the import. Otherwise, there will be loops and messed up stuff.
I kind of feel like they already have a way of if they want to like add a hook to the main thread chain, they have a way to do that even with your
Mhm.
PR already, and that they could create their own communications channel between the main thread and whatever worker
Yes.
thread they've created. And
Yeah.
their worker thread sends a message back up to the main, hey, go register such and such. And then
Yes.
they run that call from the main thread.
Eventually. Yeah. Yes.
And that's probably good enough. Like this is such an obscure edge case that I doubt we need to build an API for it.
It's not that I think it's an important use case, but what happens if you call module register on a parent thread, it will not affect the existing children,
No.
right?
No.
So if the main thread will
No, wait a
later,
second. If you wait a second, you said you could register from main thread.
example, yeah, for a main thread,
It will affect the future children only if the register was called within dash dash import. If it's called within the application entry point, it will not.
why is there a difference between
Uh,
module
bec-
register called from minus minus import and
because basically the minus import is propagated to the worker thread. So the worker thread are executing the same code.
That feels like a foot gun.
I
but
know that
and
behavior has always been confusing to me, to be
it
honest.
was I think, Paulo, your example on my PR, which I also gave it a thought, where you said you don't have an import, you have only a register call on the main
Yep.
thread, then you create a worker, and actually the worker that is created should be created with a state of the hooks at the moment the worker was created. So all the registered hooks doesn't matter how they came to be, should
We
be inherited by the created worker.
Yeah,
we can do that. We can definitely do that.
my intuition for how it should behave is that when your new thread is created, you're creating the new chain of hooks for it, or set of chains, and it should just be a clone of the main thread's chain. And then if dash dash import causes register to be called again, we do the logic that was in Gabriel's PR of like making sure that people aren't registering the same hook twice, that like filter out
No,
duplicates.
you have an absolutely good point. Yes, I can do that. I can do that
Because then
because
it always behaves the same way. Like whether or not they ran register inside dash dash import or just as like the first line of their app, new threads get spawned with the
yeah,
hooks from the parent thread.
I
I think
see your point. Yes, yes, yes.
Because a lot of
I
a lot of users don't have control over like the flags that Node is launched with. So it's like we don't want to, and then that gets pushed onto like developers of something like Next.js or whatever, where like users are like, well, I need some way to add in configuration for what node flags you should be launching things with, and
yeah,
and it's
yes,
a pain
yes,
in the
yes.
ass.
You made a absolutely good point. I can do that because if I clone the chain will be as okay. Yes, it will work. It will work. It will work.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Fox. That was a very good feedback. Yes, I can. So because I also didn't like the fact that it was behaving differently, to be honest. But once again, end of the day, I haven't thought about it too much. But that
Look, it's
works
only eight
absolutely
o'clock.
fine.
You got like 4 more hours to.
Dude, I'm dead in 30 minutes. I will tell you. I also have to put my girl to sleep, my little daughter. So think about it.
Well, let's rather than keeping going in the weeds, let's say so with the changes we discussed, I'm liking what you're describing of this
Mhm.
PR. So I feel like we're pretty close. Is there what is there for Gabriel to do? Like, should we pause the PR that he had in progress because yours includes it? Or like what,
Um,
just to organize the work, or is there some way
yeah.
Gabriel can contribute
So,
onto your branch?
Gabriel, do you have anything missing on your PR?
Uh, yes, actually, the points were I put the comments when I found on Sunday this, and then you had the idea about this broadcast channel. I think it's still also a problem with the approach that you added on top of it,
Mm-hmm.
because if I have if I have main thread starts thread A, and
Yeah.
thread A starts thread B with a minus minus import, or with a minus require that calls module register,
Yeah.
and this third thread creates the hooks thread. There
Mm-hmm.
was no minus minus, so the thread didn't exist until now. Yeah,
Okay.
the thread is instantiated at the third level of thread, so
Yep.
depth level, and then the main thread creates another thread, and
Yes.
also passes a minus require or whatever that calls module.register. I
Mm-hmm.
think we have the thread hanging at this point. So we
Okay,
have
Okay.
the
so this
problem
is
that you,
even
yeah,
even with the new
I think even
chains
with the
for
Oh,
new,
yeah,
thread,
yeah.
we
Now,
still
now I
need to
remember.
solve
because
the
the inner,
Yes.
spawning the hooks thread
the
in the first
Yes.
place
exactly,
part. Okay.
the inner thread that called module register and caused the hooks thread to be created, this
Mm-hmm.
has to broadcast this event to all the existing threads in the system, in the process at this moment,
Yep.
because they need a hooks port, so
Yes.
that the
Yes.
next time when they are starting a thread that would need again a module register, they would think it's this. I'm the first to create that. I need to create the thread, but the thread already exists, so the constructor will throw. And when the constructor will throw, I go to the hooks port, but I have no hooks port, so I hang.
I see. I see. And
Yeah.
now I
So
remember about the use case.
so
The
this
thing
is
is that,
still open, and with this broadcast channel that you proposed, Paolo, I think it is solvable. I cannot say that I'm like totally satisfied with the solution, but it's the common way of
Mm.
contributing of communicating between threads that don't know about each other.
yeah. Well,
And
actually, one thing to consider though, if you want to use the broadcast channel to pass the aux port, it might actually not work. So, the reason being is that, as you remember, there is the transfer list, right? And
Yes,
I
yes, I know.
correct me if I'm wrong on that. The object can only exist on one context at a certain time.
Yeah.
So
It has to be the other way around. It's the broadcast just broadcasts the event, and each of the existing workers that listen to this broadcast channel have to make a message channel, keep half of it, and send the other half to the hooks thread.
oh yeah, okay,
And
okay.
from that point on, the message channel that the receiving part of the broadcast channel created is the hooks port on that thread.
Oh, okay, now makes sense. Okay.
Okay, so because
Yeah.
now we have the same, we have n threads that share this internal hooks that was created by the main thread with a PR that got reverted. And this registration mechanism works exactly like I explained. It's like each time when a new thread is being created, it creates a channel, keeps
Yeah, I noticed that.
keeps one port and sends one port over via the transfer list to the hooks thread. And the same must be implemented now also if the thread is created sometimes down the road, because the thread once created, it exists system-wide, so it is a process-wide.
To be honest, when I approached the system, this port system, to be honest, was a mess to understand. It was very hard for me to try to understand why it was split, where it was registered. I got lost several days just on that specific part. That's why
This is why I'm nervous about the whole off thread stuff in general.
that is a nightmare. But that's why I was thinking if we could use broadcast channel, it would be nice, because the threads just basically sends a message, whether it's on whatever hooks threads is, it basically responds and say, okay, I'm gonna handle this thing. But then there is the problem that on broadcast channel I cannot use atomics to sync up, and that was the issue. That's why, because at the beginning I was trying to implement that solution and I got lost in the communication. It was a nightmare because basically you can send.
It's very difficult because I think JavaScript being in conception actually not multi-threaded, the mechanism to have thread communications are at a higher level through these message ports, which doesn't make it easy to implement the other
It
thing.
was complicated. But okay, so this thing is left for basically because what I would love to have in order to progress this thing is that, first of all, have your PR merged. So first of all, you take the credit because you absolutely deserve it. So you get the credit, you get your commit done, and then on top of that, since my PR is already built on top of yours, I can add my commit basically that introduce the chains right after. So that would be my line of action. But if you basically, so in other words, if you finish the part of the solving this problem of what we basically you just proposed,
The broadcast channel
then
part.
then we can merge the Gabriel's PR, and then after that I can rebase mine on top of it with my single commit and merge mine, and that would be the best line of action.
Well, the only problem with that is Matteo, I think, is blocking Gabriel's PR because it doesn't have the hooks chains from your PR.
I just wanted to propose. I wanted to propose exactly one version in which maybe we do like one PR for everything, to also not have spread work over multiple commits. It's just to not have the.
That's absolutely fine to me. I just want to make sure you have the credit. That's my only
We can land it as one commit with like co-authors. I think that's fine.
Okay, I never did it. So if it's possible, I'm absolutely fine. I don't care. So when you
neither, but what I wanted to add is that what is otherwise missing, except this is from the functionality point of view, that broadcast channel thing, but I think we need more tests. We need tests like your case that you initially posted in this separate repo, Paolo, and similar to that, maybe we need a few more to test the functionality to know at least the scenarios that we talked about, which are many, that we have tests for those, because I wouldn't like that to happen the second time.
Yes,
what we had.
Definitely. I would also
So,
defer we are not in time for 22.3 yet, right? Or no? No, because we reverted
well, I
for
think
22.
he was going to start putting it together today. So it sounds like
So
you're
that's
not.
fine.
It's not like the PR is ready to land today anyway. So I think we've missed it, unfortunately. But
Oh, that's fine. So we can aim
um,
for 22.4 though, for sure.
so can Paulo? I don't know if you might have already have it set this way, but can you update your fork, your repo, so that Gabrielle and I can both uh contribute to it, like like push commits onto your branch?
Which branch? Sorry, I got lost there.
Your fork of Node.
Oh yeah, I think I updated my PR this afternoon. 5 hours ago, to give you context, on top of the latest changes to Gabriel's PR.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking like maybe Gabrielle could just uh like if he wants to work on the broadcast channel thing, he could just do it directly on your branch on your fork, and
Mm-hmm.
then your the newest PR from today really kind of includes all three. Like it includes an original
Yep.
single hooks thread, the like bug fix for that, and
Yes.
then the chains. And let's just get it all working so that everything that everyone wants, all the tests, etc., broadcast channel is all in there. And then maybe we could like once it gets approvals, and we could like rebase it to condense it to say 3 commits of like initial
I
bug
would do
fix and thing,
I would do differently actually.
or
I
just
would
land it
say
as one commit,
No,
whatever.
actually, no, I would do differently since there are several things involved. I would say since we have a working state as of today for both our PRs, despite of a couple of edge cases, I would say I will remove the public API module.clear. I will remove from my PR, and we land that PR that includes Gabriel's and mine in our let's say today, tomorrow, whatever it is. In the meanwhile, both of us can work on new independent PR since they touch different part of the system for the what was the for my, in my case for the cleaning up, and in Gabriel's case for that edge case of the broadcast channel, and we work independently.
Well, I don't think we
Yeah,
can land this before the broadcast
exactly.
channel because I don't
No,
want to land something
no,
that's going to cause a hang again,
exactly.
you
That's
know?
Uh,
that's an edge case, to be honest. There.
Yeah, it is, but it might happen. And if it happens in Angular again, or in Platformatic for that matter,
Mm.
then we revert again.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's that's definitely a thing that we have to solve before landing. But one proposal on the organization of the branches, I now have a branch, one single branch that includes the revert commit. And on top of it, what I did with the 53200 PR, I could modify that branch, so add some commits, and you could rebase, Paulo, yours on the new
Yes.
top of
Yes.
my branch, and then we have the same content like on your PR
Mm-hmm.
built on
Yes.
just my
Yeah.
my branch growing and your growing on top of the
Yes.
branch from my
Let's
PR.
do it like that. Yes, absolutely. Works fine to me.
However you want to do it. I was just trying to like, and you guys are both on Slack, so you could coordinate. I was just trying to like make sure that we could try to divide and conquer the work.
Yeah,
So,
well,
Yeah.
we are in the same time zone, so it will be fine for us to collaborate very easily, luckily.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing is that the tests will take some time. The register with the broadcast will probably not take that long. But Geoffrey, as I told you when I started with this, the time frame, I don't have hard commitments on time frame because I'm not sure how much time every day I can put into it.
I mean, that's how it is for everybody. So,
I mean, yeah, but
we have
I'm
no
just pointing it
expectations.
out. I'm
And
just
now at
pointing
least we
it
have
out so that.
Paolo basically on this full time until it's resolved, I hope. So,
Yeah.
but it sounds like we're really close. Like maybe this week, it sounds like we can
I
get
guess
this
so, yeah.
done. So,
I
Yeah.
mean, I should be able to easily do the cleaning up. Sorry. Yes, cleaning up tomorrow for sure. So it won't take that much time because it's just a couple of events. And removing a public API is a no-brainer. It's a couple of lines to delete, and that's pretty much it. So,
there was the other thing about the cloning of the
oh yes,
main
actually, you know what?
chain.
Give me a
Add
sec,
that,
otherwise I forget
write
because
that
it's
down.
too late. Give me a sec. So to do.
I mean that feels a little tricky. Like that's certainly going to be more work than just deleting a public API, but it also doesn't feel going to take you days to figure out either.
And if I'm the one that stays behind, I mean, if there are open points and you can jump in, Paolo, and have time to look into it, you could also commit to my branch. That's not an issue.
To be honest, I will not mess with the broadcast channel. As we say in Italy, I launch the stone and hide the hand basically. So I won't even try, to be honest. I'm not even trying. No, because I got lost in the communication.
Okay, so maybe Gabriel will tackle that on his branch, and you
Yeah.
could just rebase again afterwards.
Yes. No, actually, fun fact. I mean, I could actually dig into the broadcast channel, but it will take me a lot of time because when I started this thing, I was not familiar with the code base at all, and I'm not familiar yet. The messaging parts confuse me a lot, so it's better if I give it to Gabriel, which has.
I've been looking at this code base for 2 years, and I still don't know how the hell it works.
I also look at it since only 1 month, so I'm not but let's see what we can do about it. So yeah, we learn by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Okay, actually, what a sec. What was the third part? Okay, cloning.
Cloning the main thread hooks chains when a child thread is created. And and corollary to that, filter out double registered hooks if like dash import gets run for a new worker.
Yes. Yeah, because that part actually always bothered me. So it was confusing.
The filtering part is already on Gabriel's branch.
It needs a fix, but yeah, I can take that because Paolo, I think you fixed it, so yeah.
Yeah, I basically the only part that we were missing used to do the strict equal comparison of the data.
Yeah.
That was the only part that was, but it was pretty straightforward. I changed to be non-functional for performance reason, but that was the thing, not much. Okay.
All
okay,
right.
so we have a plan then. That was amazing. Just 15 minutes.
Great meeting.
Yeah, it was very, very good. Yeah, very, very productive. Amazing, folks. Thank you very much.
Paolo, get some sleep.
Yep. Thank you.
I will. I'm already sleeping.